What is going on, everyone? Let's talk about the great city of Jacksonville, Florida. Jacksonville is the most populous city in Florida, and it is also the largest city by area in the contiguous United States. Contiguous, basically that means the lower 48. Just a fancy word to say lower 48. Don't know why I used it. Not the fancy type of talking dude. Anyway, moving on. Only Alaska has cities with more land. Juneau and Anchorage are the big ones, and they have a couple other small. They're basically towns with like 8,000 people or so, but they've got a whole bunch of undeveloped land, so technically, they're bigger than Jacksonville, but not really. This city has a lot of history and things to do. Jacksonville's where they filmed the movie that scared the crap out of me when I was like 8 or 9. It was The Creature from the Black Lagoon. When you're 8 or 9, that's a really scary movie. I watched this movie with my uncle and I asked him how do they make creatures like that, and he told me, well, I guess when men live alone in the swamp too long, they start looking at alligators the wrong way, and 9 months later you have a Creature from the Black Lagoon. I was about 25 when I realized what the hell he was talking about, and I laughed all those years later. Jacksonville is right here, in case you don't know. The River City, or Jayville as it's called, was incorporated in 1832 and consolidated in 1968. The River City is a great city with a lot of history, but really wasn't, let's say, one of the United States' better cities until about the mid-80s. As it continued to grow and get more known and better, in 1993 they actually got an NFL team. The Jaguars have played there since. They also hosted the Super Bowl in 2005. Jacksonville is a great city with many positives that would make just about anyone want to move there. This video isn't about those things. This video is about things that might make you not want to move to Jayville. So sit back and watch my top 10 reasons not to move to Jacksonville, Florida. Number 10, racial tension. Now, there's no getting around this one. I don't like bringing this type of thing up in my videos, but if I didn't, I'd be kind of dropping the ball, especially for someone that, let's say, may be a minority that's thinking about moving to Jacksonville. Something you should know about. Jacksonville has a long history of racial tension. Residents try to deny that there's such a problem these days, but if you visit the city or live there for any amount of time, you will notice the difference among the residents. I haven't visited in 5 or 6 years. I stayed there for a couple months one time. I could tell there was a difference. Also, the friend I stayed with lives just south of Jacksonville. He used to live in Jacksonville. He lives now in a place called Sawgrass. He has some money. He said that when he lived in Jacksonville in the 90s and early 2000s, it was terribly obvious. He went on to say that he thinks things are getting a little bit better, especially the millennials. They just don't really buy into much of the racism like older generations did, but he said it's still there. Maybe if it keeps moving in this direction, it won't be a thing in a couple decades or so. Sadly, today, it's still a thing. Number 9, education. Jacksonville doesn't educate their children too well in some areas of the city. The average student-to-teacher ratio is 18-1, while the average across the country is 16-1. That isn't the worst, but it's not the best either. If you have school-age kids, make sure you do your homework on the schools of Jacksonville. It can be really hit or miss. Ortega Forest and Beach Haven are really good. If you can get into those schools, that's a good plan, because they all have really good stats. One thing I wish they did have stats on were the PTA. I feel like I have PTSD from dealing with one of them once. We had this one head of our kid's school PTA one time, and she went on this major power trip and had to be removed from office a month into the school year. She actually sent out a letter telling all the parents that there was a mandatory meeting that all parents from the school had to attend. She insinuated that she would look into having your children move to a different school if the parents didn't attend. This was a public school. This wasn't like some private school where that kind of insanity might be kind of normal. This was a public school. She also decided that all events should be professionally filmed. She didn't want to risk any amateur video getting on the internet of the kids and making the school look bad. So they were going to hire a company to do all the plays and all that. It was stupid. Number 8. Gun laws. Jacksonville residents feel very strongly about their guns. Florida has always been a gun-friendly state. Because of some recent tragic shootings, things are changing, but it's still a very gun-friendly state. People like their guns, I'm telling you. You should really know this if you're not a fan of guns and the Second Amendment and you're thinking about moving to Jacksonville. You will see heated conversations about this eventually. This is one of the subjects that people on both sides are very passionate about. The fact is this: guns will be around till the end of time or until we all become masters of the flying guillotine, whichever comes first. So here's my disclaimer on this one. I have guns. I was in the Army. I know how to use guns. I believe in the Second Amendment. I also believe that if you have a mental issue or some other reason law enforcement has deemed you unworthy of the Second Amendment, that's their right. They should be able to do that. This one is for people that are moving to the area that aren't fans of guns. You should know this about Florida and Jacksonville if you're moving there. Number 7. Traffic. Commuting has been getting worse and worse every year and doesn't seem to be slowing down. It's pretty much necessary to have a car in Jacksonville, and this is in part due to the subpar public transportation system they have. On average, the typical resident will commute at least an hour in normal traffic conditions. This is one of those things that's relative to where you're coming from. If you're coming from LA, New York, San Francisco, this is a nice relaxing commute that you enjoy. If you're coming from someplace like Atlanta, it gets bad some days. If you're coming from some small town like Medicine Lodge, Kansas, you will cry 5 days a week to and from work and feel like you're being held against your will. Now here's a tip for you. The Navy and insurance companies get off work early, so expect traffic to get busy around 3, especially in certain areas. Number 6. Crime. The Jacksonville crime rate is one of the highest in the country. For every 100,000 residents, there's about 4,000 crimes reported every single year. The crime rate here is 51% higher than the national average, and it's only safer than 12% of the other cities in this country. This place is just depressing when you read their news. This is how Google headline news reads for Jacksonville. Jacksonville councilman pushing to make runways longer. Jacksonville rapper dodges injury in Sunday shooting in Waycross. Man sought after thief raids Jacksonville beach home. Silver alert issued for missing Jacksonville woman. 2 wounded in Jacksonville double shooting. Killer serving life sentence in Jacksonville teacher's murder. Jacksonville gets a new movie theater. There's a plus. Jacksonville man arrested February 1st for attempted murder. And then some dude shaved his neighbor's dog without consent from the dog or the owner. So yeah, that's just the front page of their news, and it's depressing. Number 5. Natural disasters. While the first and last hurricane to hit Jacksonville was 1964, Florida gets hit by hurricanes and wildfires almost every single year, and they experience other natural disasters as well. 3 years ago, my cousin's ex-wife visited Disney World and scored a lifetime ban over a stale churro. Be prepared to get good homeowners or renters insurance if you live in Jacksonville. Flood insurance is a big one here too. When Hurricane Irma hit Florida in 2017, it was bad. By the time it got up towards Tampa, it was only a Category 1. By the time it got up near Jacksonville, it really wasn't even a hurricane anymore, but the storm surge still flooded some of the neighborhoods and stayed flooded for days. A Times report called Jacksonville the city that would never drain. It said in 2013, a Duval County report showed that a Category 3 hurricane could create a 20-foot storm surge along the St. Johns River. Even a Category 1 storm could bring a 6-foot storm surge. So make sure you have all the insurance you need, a bug-out bag, and some swim fins if you feel they're needed. Number 4. The homeless. It is always sad to see members of your community in need, and it's not always drugs and drinking. It is a lot of times, but sometimes it's just bad luck. In Jacksonville, there's a lot of bad luck going around and a lot of drugs and drinking. The city has about 400 chronic homeless residents in downtown Jacksonville alone, and about 25% of them are veterans. And that always sucks. When I was in Jacksonville some years back actually, I went to get something to eat with a friend I was there with. It was near the football stadium. But anyway, we saw a young couple out there, probably in their early 20s. The guy was playing a guitar. They're trying to make some money. They're doing something to make some money. I don't like to give them money, so I asked them, "Are you guys hungry?" And I've never seen a girl say yes so quickly. So she was definitely hungry. I went in and I got them some food. We went someplace else and got something to eat. As we were leaving, there was another guy at the exit of the mall with a standard sign that read, the "will work for food." He was like 300 pounds. All I could think was, this dude's like a workaholic. Anyway, he was pretty sad. He looked a little too clean to be homeless, and he looked a little too heavy to be hungry. That one was weird. But still, they got a big problem down there. Number 3, humidity. Being that Jacksonville is in Florida, you can expect high temperatures and high humidity throughout the year. The climate of Florida is called subtropic. There's no downhill snow skiing in anything that has the word tropic to it. Unless, of course, you've been doing some heavy drugs, then maybe you have gone downhill skiing in the tropic. In the coldest months, the average temperature is in the mid-50s, while the hottest months gets up into the 90s. Now, that's from the Weather Channel, so stop typing. I always get people wanting to argue weather stats with me, and it's always some weak argument like, "Dude, it was in the low 50s all of last week, not the mid-50s. Averages. Number 2, that swamp smell. Jacksonville is pretty much one big swamp, as is most of Florida. As you can imagine, the city in areas around the swamp smell awful. And not to mention all the bugs that hang out around swamps too. You get the smell and the bugs. How cool is that? And it used to smell so much worse. In the mid-80s, the mayor and city council passed some pretty serious environmental ordinances, especially for their time, that curbed some of what was being put into the air that, when combined with the swamp smell, made Jacksonville not very appealing to tourists. tourists. Now, you still have the swamp smell, which is still bad, but not as bad as it used to be. But the swamp smell, I hate the swamp smell. If you live there, you're used to it, and so you're not going to know what I'm talking about. But if you're a tourist and you go there to visit, you'll notice it right away. And number 1, Jacksonville versus Jacksonville Beach. Tourists and transplants get this one confused a lot, and it gets under the skin of almost every local. The city of Jacksonville and the city of Jacksonville Beach are two different cities entirely, and any local will let you know real quick. If you get them wrong, one of two things will happen. You'll get an eye roll and then they walk away and don't say anything, or they get really irritated and explain it to you like you're 6 years old or severely impaired. If you are confused at which one you're in, just remember Jacksonville Beach has almost no sidewalks. It's like the city laid down the streets and said, screw them. If they want sidewalks in front of their house, they can pay for it. That's kind of what my dad told me about everything too. You want that? You can pay for it. Every single thing. He also used to tell me when I asked him for something, Jim, life is a giant sucking void with glimpses of false hope in an ever-expanding universe. Still don't know what that meant. Anyway, so that's my list. Top 10 reasons not to move to Jacksonville. Jacksonville's not a terribly bad city, so it was kind of hard to find legitimate things wrong with this place. I think everyone should go visit Jacksonville, see if it is your type of place, but if some of these things like the heat and the swamp smell and, things like that bug you, it might not be for you, but it's a good city. All right, so don't forget to leave a comment. Tell me what you thought. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.